Hi there, we're going to take another step in the lessons to work with maybe a Mixamo character back in Photoshop here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to bring in our Mixamo character, Mousy here. And I want to also eventually have this 3D monitor also with him so we can kind of position them together. I'd like to get these two guys put together, save it out as a ping file so I can bring it into Captivate and then put captions on top of the monitor. So let's see the steps involved in this. I'm going to close out this little sample file. I'm going to make a new file. I'm just going to come over and make a web file that's 1024 by 768. I'm going to turn off my artboards and I'm going to click Create. The first step in this process is to bring in the Mixamo character that you downloaded from Mixamo.com. Now those are covered in previous lessons. We went to Mixamo, we found a character, we found a piece of animation, we applied it, we downloaded it as a .dae file or collada file. Now we're going to bring that file into this Photoshop document. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look back into my recents here and let me find Mousy from yesterday. Here's pointing, here's mouse right here, pointing DAE. This is the download file. I'm going to change this to pixels so I have a kind of an idea how tall I want to make him. Let's say I'm going to make him 800 pixels tall. Mousy comes in here. And the only thing I'm going to do after Mousy comes in here is I'm not going to position him or anything. I'm going to actually do that in the next program called Adobe Dimensions. My only purpose for using Photoshop right now is to go under 3D and go to export this 3D layer. I need to change it from this DAE file to a wavefront OBJ file or object file so I can bring this into Adobe Dimensions. So I'm going to change the Y height here to around 800. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. It's going to ask me where to save this, and I'll save this as Mousy 2. And I'm going to save him into the pointing 1 folder. Now a little spinner is spinning here and it'll let me know when that goes away that it's been saved out in this OBJ format. What I'm going to do now, that ping format you hear is the skin for this character that makes up the color. I'm done here now, so I'm just going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to quit. So that's the first step. It was only to use Photoshop as a means of converting the DAE file into a OBJ file. So if I double click on my folder here so you can see it, and I'm going to say date modified, and there's my OBJ file. Now I'm going to open up Adobe Dimension. Now you could take a course from us on Dimension. It's a phenomenal program. I don't know what to say. It is used to manipulate 3D objects. It's not necessarily creating them from scratch. It's not a 3D modeling program, but it's a program to help us understand how we can use different 3D objects to make up like a composite, like you see right here. Come over here to New. And I'm going to say I want a canvas here. This canvas came in at 1280 by 720. The way you specify that, by the way, is you go under File, you say New with Settings, you put in your size, and I also put in a resolution of 150 in case I want to increase the size of this back in Captivate. I'll still have some pixels left over. So let's create this. File and import a 3D model. This is the OBJ model that we want here. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to find my folder called Pointing 1. I'm going to bring in a mouse to OBJ, and here he comes. And I don't know what that is. That may be his foot. Holy mackerel, he's huge. So what I'm going to do, I know this is new for you. Over here it says CH14. That's the name of this character from Mixamo. I'm going to come down here to position. And again, I'm not trying to teach you dimension. I'm just trying to show you how to use it, basically. I'm going to double click on the X position. I'm going to put in 0. I'm going to tab across to the Y position. I'm going to say 0. I'm going to go to Z and I'm going to say 0. And now he's in the 0, 0, 0 position, which I'll call the home position. Down here's the size of him in millimeters. I'm going to click this invisible, almost hidden padlock, so it is locked. That means any dimensional changes I make down here, X, Y, and Z, or Z, will actually be proportional. I'm going to change this to, let's say, 400. It's a little tall. Let me come down here to 200. Okay, that's not so bad. Let me try 150. Okay, so here's Mousy. Now, I know this is not fair to you because you've never worked in Dimension, but I'm kind of teasing you and egging you on to go ahead and get into here. This little thing is called a widget or a gizmo. And this gizmo, if you hover over different parts of it, have the ability to move in a Z direction, X direction, Y direction. Okay? There's these other little circles that are for rotating. I can rotate on a Y-axis. Oh, so I can reposition him. This is interesting. Huh. If I want to scale him, I can go over on these little scale squares, I'll call them. And I can drag him up. And I can drag him down. Now what I'm going to do here for a second is I'm going to move him over here. And what I want is, I'll reposition him in a second, but I want another 3D object. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on the left side. And there's different assets that are already in Dimension. It has assets for models, like you see right here. Everything from coffee cups to bananas. Down here below, our ability to add different materials to a model. Wow. And down here are different lighting conventions or setups or rigs. What I'm doing here today is just going to use this character and a simple model that I want of, we'll say, a LED monitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to search my assets for LED monitor. Nothing's there. So what I'm going to do, it says no results found. Search Adobe stock for LED monitor. This is going to open up Adobe stock. Now, that came over with this search spec. Some of these you have to buy. But there's a lot of them that are free. So let's say we're going to bring in, let's say this 16 by 10. Here's a 16 by 9 monitor. Now it says it's already licensed. That's because I've already downloaded it. But I'm going to show you, if you click on this and say click and download, I'm going to go ahead.
Could you try again?
Excuse me, Siri, I'm recording.
I don't know what you mean by, excuse me, Siri, I'm recording.
Thank you.
How about a whip?
Let me turn Siri off here. Let me go back over here. I'm going to save this as a zip file. And I'm going to go over here to my downloads. And there it is. It says Adobe stock. and here's the object. I'm going to quit out of Firefox and Adobe Stock and come back to my document. Okay, so let's bring in that character, but first a word from my sponsor. I'm going to go into the upper left. I'm going to clear my search field. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Import. I'm going to pick 3D Model. I'm going to go to my Downloads. I'm going to go to Date Added. I'm going to double click. I'm going to hope this is my monitor. Double click. And it's going to load this 3D model into Dimension. It's big. So what I'm going to do is, here's the secret sauce again. Over here under size, it always comes in with the padlock for proportionality unlocked. I want it locked. So I can change this proportionally. Now I can type in a number, which is probably what I should do, but I also can hover over this number if I'm lucky, and sometimes, there we go, sometimes I can move my mouse and scale it manually. Well, that's going to take like 6 weeks. So let me go over here and put in 200. That's a little small. Let's say 400. That might be a little big. Let's try 300. That looks better. Now, over here on the gizmo, I'm going to go on my Rotate Y gizmo. I'm going to turn it over here, and I'm going to kind of make it perfectly straight. You can see down in my Y coordinates I'm trying to hit 45 degrees. And now, here's another hard thing. Over here on the left is a camera control to orbit or reposition the view of this. So I'm going to click on that. Now this is repositioning the view of the scene. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Let me go back to my selection arrow over here in the upper left. Same shortcut as every Adobe program. V is in victory. And I'm going to move this over. Whoop, let me not do that. Let me pull it ahead, move it over here a little bit, and move it back, we'll say. I'm going to take my buddy here. I'm going to move him over here. Maybe I'll rotate him a little bit. And he's going to say, hey, you need to look at this, because we're going to talk about something important here. And I'll move him over here a little bit more. So once I get him positioned where I want him to be, and let me click on the monitor here. Let's see here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead, and now this is what I want. This is the scene I want to bring into Captivate. So now, if I want to check this, I'm going to go over here to the upper right corner. There's a little icon up here to show a kind of a preview render. Now this is not the final what is called render, but this is one that's going to take a look at it. Let's click on it. And you can see your computer's going to work on it and get it better and better and better, and you could sit here for a couple of minutes and it would finally probably stop. But this is giving me an idea on how this looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that again to toggle it off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to Render. I'm going to pick PSD. It says 16 bits per channel. Remember that. Quality. Slow takes a long time. Let's do low and fast, and let's give this a name of, let's say, demo mouse underscore LED monitor. I'll save it back in the same folder, but I'm going to put it on the low quality. So now it's going to burn through this a little bit faster. If I need to pause, I will. Let's see how fast this is. It looks like it's going to be 1 minute and 14 seconds or a minute. So I am going to pause it and then come back. Okay, we're back. It took 1 minute and 30 seconds. Don't let me lie to you. It took longer than that. It might have said 1 minute 30, but it took longer than that. It's kind of like these estimated render times, and like most things, they're pretty optimistic. But anyway, it's done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up back to design in the upper left, and I'm going to save this for you. And we're just going to name it mouse monitor in case I want to come back to this file. I'll put it in my dimension output. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to quit out of Dimension. Now here's a problem. Sorry. The output from Dimension gives me a Photoshop file that's 16 bits. And that means it's a higher quality file than an 8-bit file. So when I try to open up, and I'll do it right now to prove it to you, let's open up Captivate and try to bring in this Photoshop 16-bit file. So it's going to come up here in a second. I'm going to do a blank project, 1280 by 720 in the lower left, create. I'm going to delete the placeholder graphic when it comes up here. If it does come up, let me drop my scale down, because you're Captivate users. You know what I'm doing. I'm going to get rid of this placeholder. No, I don't want it. Thank you very much. I'm going to bring in the Photoshop file. Now, if you're new to Captivate, you'd think, I'm a genius. I know go to Media and pick in my image file, and I will go to my Photoshop file here, and I will go to my downloads, and I'll go to Dimension Output, and it's all grayed out. That's because, for some strange reason in Captivate, they don't have the Photoshop import here under Media. Don't ask me. Go under File and go to Import and go to Photoshop File. Go to my downloads, go to my Dimension Output. There's my PSD file. Now, if you're familiar with here, unable to import the selected PSD, ensure the following and then retry. The file's not damaged, but the image mode needs to be in 8 bits. Huh? Well, that's because, remember, I mentioned that Dimension exported out the Photoshop files at 16-bit to give it better quality. Unfortunately, there's no 8-bit export out of Dimension, which is not a big deal, but we have to open up Photoshop. So it's just one more step, but we'll get used to this. So we'll go in here to Photoshop. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open up my export from Adobe Dimension. I'm going to go to Downloads. I'm going to go to Dimension Output. I'm going to open up my Demo Mouse LED PSD. I'm going to come over here to the Layers panel. Now there's a bunch of layers here. Some layers are off, some layers are on. Now there's some other layers in here that are extremely useful and complicated, but I'm not going to use them right now. The only thing I want is the layer of the rendered image and not the background. That's the only thing I want. You got to go under Image to Mode and change this to 8 bits. I mean, that was the whole reason for coming in here. My goodness, I got distracted. Image, Mode, 8 bits. Now, File, Save As. I'm just going to save the Photoshop file. I'll show you why. And I'll put a little notation on this that we've changed it. The reason I'm doing this is because when I bring this into Captivate, Captivate does give me the luxury of importing a Photoshop file and being able to pick what layers are going to be brought in. So if I don't want my easel logo, I can turn it off right now. If I don't want the rendered image for some crazy reason, I can turn it off. So I can pick and choose what layers. So I'm going to keep those two. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to scale this down according to the size of my stage or my slide. Cross your fingers. So now I've got some layers down here. I got a layer called Image 2 and Image 1. If I hide Image 2, oh, that's my logo. So I better click on that and come up here to the upper right and name it logo. Image 1 is the mouse in the computer. I'm going to name that mouse and LED. There you go. So now I've got those two in here. Now let's say we want to scale them up. Let's say I'm going to turn off the logo for now. And whoops, not delete, but I'm going to hide it. I'm going to come back and click on Mousey, and I'm going to scale him up. I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to scale him up a little bit bigger. He's got big ears. Wow, sort of like me. Let's put him right there. And let's say that's the way I want it to look. In fact, it's a little big. It looks like I'm claustrophobic here, so let me bring this down. And I'll position him, and I got him where I want him. Now, a couple things. I'm going to go over here to shapes, and I'm going to pick a rectangle. I'm going to draw a rectangle off the same size as my stage or my slide. I'm going to come over here in the properties panel. I'm going to pick, instead of solid, let's give them a gradient fill. You know, that's not so bad. I think I like this black to white. Now you can come in here to fill, and you can pick some other gradients, and you can see down here some custom gradients depending on which color you originally picked. And say, let's say this one. So now you know that in Captivate the last object drawn is on top. So I have to come down to my timeline, and I'm going to drag the Smart Shape background down so it's just on the back of the slide. And now I've got a beautiful background for this. I'm going to lock that shape. I'm going to lock the mouse. And I can put my logo back on there, I guess. Let me move it over here a little bit. That's good. You can use your arrow keys also to move these things around. Anyway, let me lock this. So then it's up to you. You just go over here maybe to text and text caption. And I'm going to come over here on the right, and I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to change my text to black. I'm going to change the height to 48. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click off and click on so I can move it. I'll drag this up here. I'll resize my caption. I'll change it to left justified. I'll change it to top if I want to align to the top or align to the middle. You get the idea. So I can put anything in here I want. I can adjust it so the caption comes up after maybe half a second when it's playing. Let's just take a look. Preview, HTML5 in browser. Here we go. Ta-da! So, there you go. Now I know I did a lot of stuff, so you might have to go back and look again. You get the Mixamo character. You download it in a DAE format from Mixamo. I've got to go to Photoshop with that file, save it or export it out into the 3D menu. The 3D menu, not file. The 3D menu, and save it as an OBJ file. Wavefront OBJ. That file's brought into Dimension. Then I can bring other objects into Dimension. When I'm done making my scene, I render out my Photoshop file. Unfortunately, I gotta bring it into Photoshop. change it down to 8 bits, and then I can bring it into Captivate. Phew! Fortunately, that little character here of the mouse, he's over here in my library. So if I come over here and I make a new slide, and I want to use him again, I can come over here and drag him out of the library. Ta-da! So, a lot of stuff. We'll cover some more in Dimension here as time goes on, but I wanted you to know about this. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.